Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner.
Welcome back. I'm Fox News. New Hampshire bucks Biden and National Democrats sets early 2024 presidential primary date. Yeah. Boy, I'll tell you, my understanding is New Hampshire has been the first primary state since 1920. That was the first year of Prohibition, for those of you that are looking back, and also the first year that Warren Harding was president of the United States. That's how long it's been, over 100 years. And if you remember, Joe Biden did so badly in the primaries in 2020. He got like fourth in New Hampshire, fifth in Iowa, and I forgot the other one. His campaign was in shambles. And so the DNC decided to buy off some of the candidates, like Pete Buttigieg, for instance. They got a cabinet post, and Representative Claiborne, who has a big political machine in South Carolina, set up Biden to win South Carolina big, and he went on from there to win the nomination easily. And they want a repeat of that. New Hampshire thumbs its nose at President Biden and the National Democratic Committee as it holds to its century-old presidential primary. Now, I'm not a big fan of Sununu. He's a Republican governor of New Hampshire. He's not a conservative Republic by any means, but I will give him this. And you see from the thumbnail, New Hampshire tells DNC to shove it, and that's in essence what they did. The crucial general election battlefield state of New Hampshire is upholding tradition and disregarding likely penalties from National Democrats by holding its presidential primary first. A nearly year-long battle between New Hampshire and the Democratic National Committee over the timing of the state's century-old first-in-the-nation presidential primary came to culmination on Wednesday. The day of the New Hampshire first-in-the-nation primary will be January 23rd, which is in essence just about 2 months and change from now. It's 60 days, it's not much. Secretary of State Dave Scanlon announced in front of a crowd of national and local reporters, state officials, and lawmakers, the Democrat and Republican state primary chairs, other political leaders and dignitaries crowded into the Hall of Flags of the State House in Concord. Or if you're familiar with how they pronounce it, Concord. I can't do the New England accent, sorry. The only thing I know in New England accent is, go get the paper. The state that Scanlon announced formally put the state out of compliance with DNC's 2024 presidential nominating calendar. The state will now face sanctions from the Democrats. Ooh, maybe there'll be a double secret probation, which could result in the loss of half New Hampshire's delegates to the next summer's national convention. Well, it can't have a hell of a lot. They're only New Hampshire. Holding an unsanctioned primary has led President Biden to keep his name off the New Hampshire ballot, but greater state Democrats have launched a write-in campaign in an attempt to prevent an electoral embarrassment of the president as he runs for a second term in the White House. What they'll do is somebody else besides Biden will win the primary, it looks like, and they'll take half the delegates away from New Hampshire in response. It's all to protect the incumbent. I can't say that every party, they'd like to protect the incumbent, but the fact of the matter is changing it around the order of the primaries after 100 years is really showing their desperation. And it's fascinating how the reason they use for changing it around, not that Biden sucks, it's interesting, you'll see in the article later. Republican Chris Sununu, a vocal critic of the move to upend New Hampshire's cherished role in holding the first presidential primary, warned there's no doubt that citizens across New Hampshire, especially independents and Democrats, are taking notice or being pushed aside by the National Party. No one takes very kindly to that, especially in politics, being told their voice doesn't matter like it used to. I have no doubt it will have a lot of effect come November 24th, Sununu told reporters. The governor predicted that the precedent that President Biden has potentially set is no Democrat will ever dare to skip New Hampshire again, because I think it's really going to hurt President Biden. It's going to hurt his chances. There's the Democrat Party as a whole. They tried every which way to move us off of our law, which we've obviously not going to do. Skip New Hampshire at their own peril. Now, here's the interesting thing. Why the Democrats use as a reason why they want to change the order. Not because their candidate and their incumbent sucks, National Democrats for years have mocked both Iowa, whose caucuses for 50 years led off the party's nominating calendar, and New Hampshire as unrepresentative of the party as a whole because the states have largely white populations with fewer major urban areas. Now, we'll say that's true. So when you don't do well in the first 2 or 3 primaries like Biden didn't, you go to South Carolina and recoup. It's amazing to me. They're using the diversity nonsense to rig a primary. Nevada and South Carolina, which in recent cycles have voted 3rd and 4th on the calendar, are much more diverse than either Iowa or New Hampshire, i.e., there's less white people. Nevada and South Carolina are added to the Democratic calendar nearly 2 decades ago to increase the diversity of the state's electorate. It's all about equity. Equity, folks, is racism, period. And, you know, the Republicans and Trump particularly don't do very well with suburban women. And a large percent of them are white. Well, you white suburban women, look at what the Democrats are doing. They're saying because you're white, you don't represent our party. So why are you still voting for them? While Republicans aren't making major changes to the schedule, the DNC earlier this year overwhelmingly approved the calendar proposed last year by Biden to move South Carolina to the lead position on February 3rd. New Hampshire and Nevada are scheduled to hold primaries 3 days later, with Iowa entirely losing its early state position. The president and supporters of the new calendar argue that it would improve minority voters. How? They can still vote in primaries later. It's the excuses they use, this diversity excuse, constantly is getting so old. We're upon whom Democrats have long relied, but have at times taken for granted. At times, how about every time? To comply with the DNC, New Hampshire would have needed to scrap its state law protecting its first-in-the-nation primary status and expand access to early voting. That early voting is just, I'm sorry, I don't go along with it. I live in upstate New York. It's a disaster here. It's too open for things that aren't legitimate. We'll leave it at that. It's not a good idea. Maybe the Friday before the election, if the election is on Tuesday, you can vote Friday, Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday, or maybe even Sunday, depending. Give a couple extra days. All right, I can go along with that. But this week, 10 days, 2 weeks, and longer, just not a good idea. With the Republicans in control of both houses, the Democrats repeatedly say this is a non-starter. Scanlon know that the day he complies with our state statute requiring our presidential primary be at least 7 days before any similar event, and it preserves the position of the traditional Iowa caucus. Yeah, it's a state law, but the DNC is just a position, not a law. But like typical Democrats, what we think and our position on something is the law. The DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee, which oversees the party's presidential nominating calendar, last month ruled New Hampshire was conditionally non-compliant, as the state was expected to announce a primary date outside the DNC's window. Scanlon told reporters that he didn't buy National Democrats' justification for changing the calendar because New Hampshire is not racially diverse enough. This is an appalling argument. It is. Or excuse me, an appealing argument. Yeah, it is if you're a Democrat, and will certainly impact individuals, but it's not the real reason why this is going on. Well, he's not going to say that Biden sucks. New Hampshire doesn't conform, and there are individuals on the national level, probably in both parties, that would like to say this is going to be the nominee. That's the best person that has a chance of winning the presidency, and that's the person we want on the general election ballot. New Hampshire is the polar opposite of that, he argued. When you have a president that decides he's not going to push himself on the ballot before the voters of a state that is going to have a nominating event, I think that's the wrong decision. Because it's going to make him look bad. It's going to make him look bad. And I'm sure he has plenty of money for his campaign to go into New Hampshire. That means he'll have to make a lot of public appearances in New Hampshire. And, of course, they roll the dice, the Democrats, when they put Joe Biden out in public. Oh, God. Scanlon told Fox News that DNC's threats were meaningless. New Hampshire has a tradition, and New Hampshire has a law. And both the tradition and the law are going to be followed no matter what. Now the DNC will decide whether they're going to sanction New Hampshire somehow because we're not complying with their calendar. Sununu, point of the DNC, told reporters, everything have tried and failed, we're going first. There are plenty of Democrats in Iowa and New Hampshire who see the upending of their leadoff positions as sour grapes from Biden, who finished a disappointing fourth in the 2020 Iowa caucuses and fifth in the New Hampshire primary, before a second-place finish in Nevada and a landslide victory in South Carolina, basically done by Representative Claiborne and his political machine there, and just tons of money that poured in, propelled him toward the nomination, eventually the White House. The president faces long-shot primary challenges from two Democrats who will be on the ballot in New Hampshire. Three-term, now no, this is not RFK Jr. The Democrats won't allow him. And where's Cornel West, the professor, the leftist professor? And there's two or three others. Where's Jake Uger? He announced he's going to run for president. Would he come in third or fourth in a congressional race in California? Three-term Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota, one of the wealthiest members of Congress, formally announced his presidential bid. Now, when you got FU money, you can really put out a good race, depending on how much you can use unlimited funds if it's your own money. It's filed the State House on October 27th to place his name on the state's ballot. Also on the Granite State ballot is another challenger, best-selling author and spiritual advisor, Marianne Williamson. She's an interesting character who is making her second run at the White House. But she's on the ballot, and Joe Biden isn't. Well, the president who turns 81 this week is the commanding front runner for the nomination. And by the way, today is my birthday, the 16th. I'm a little bit younger than Joe, though. Polls indicate Biden faces mounting concerns from Democrats over his age. It's not his age. I wish they would quit saying that. Yes, 81 is high. It's his mental faculties that are the problem. Trump is, I believe, is 77. That's only 4 years behind President Biden. But yet his mental faculties, whether you like the guy or hate him, you have to admit his mental faculties are 100 times better than Biden's. It's not his age. It's some people age differently than the others, and Biden is not aging well. Those surveys who suggest that many Americans, including plenty of Democrats, don't want president to seek a second term in the White House. There are concerns among Granite Staters that the move by the president of the DNC to revamp the nominating calendar and his absence from the primary ballot could lead to a ballot box setback for Biden in New Hampshire. Personally, I believe the president is making a mistake by not putting his name on the ballot. But longtime New Hampshire-based Democrat consultant Jim Demers, a top Biden supporter in the Granite State, who's helping to lead the primary ballot write-in effort on behalf of the president, disagreed with Sununu's prediction that the battle over the primary date will impact Democrats in November. Of course he has to say that. I think once the nomination is locked up, the conversation takes place. Joe Biden will be back in New Hampshire campaigning. Yeah. What are they going to do this time? They can't hide him in the basement. They can't do that. This is going to be wild. In between Trump's trials, and he's going to be found guilty of one of these. It's just law of averages. And when will the appeal be? After the November election next year, more than likely. So there's the historic sign there in the state of New Hampshire since 1920. That was the first year of Prohibition, like I said, and that was the first year of Warren Harding as president. That's how long ago that was. So the DNC is trying to protect Biden, and he needs a lot of protection, believe me. We're going to see what happens. So good for the state of New Hampshire, even though I'm not a big Sununu fan. The thumbnail pretty much got it right. New Hampshire tells the DNC to shove it. As well they should. What do you think? Until the next time, goodbye and good luck.